Bugsnax, the game that asks questions like, what would it be like if there were bugs made out of food? What would it be like if those same bugs, when eaten, turn your body into food? And what would it be like if you were a colorful, hairy monster person? Are these odd questions that nobody asked? Yeah. But this also is a game that just might surprise those that bravely choose to press the new game button. I know I was. Let me set the stage for you. The game opens with an unnamed orange grumpus majestically flying up to an island in a cool-looking hot air balloon ship thing. Everything seems great until suddenly your ship is set upon by what looks like a giant flying pizza, knocking you and your floaty boat out of the sky and causing you to plummet to the island below. But don't worry, you can't really die in this game, so you muster up the strength to press on. You head through a creepy cave, cross a rickety bridge, and finally approach a ladder on the ledge of a cliff when the island is struck by an earthquake. And as the flying pizza soars by overhead, the ledge you are standing on gives out, causing you to fall yet again, this time hitting your head on the rocks below and blacking out. The screen flashes and you are greeted with a black and white film apparently sent to you by one Elizabeth Megafig, a relatively well-known intrepid adventurer who goes on to explain that she has now taken on the task of uncovering the secrets of a new species that she has discovered called Bugsnax on an island just off the coast known only as Snacktooth. It is revealed that your character must be some kind of journalist, as Elizabeth, having seen some of your past work on other various cryptids, has sent you this video to invite you to her little community on the island to document and ultimately write a story on what she uncovers about these unusual creatures. The video ends and you suddenly realize you are sitting in an office in front of another orange grump who can only be your boss at what must be a tabloid of some kind, as she goes on to berate you about your previous failed articles. The conversation ends with your boss finally agreeing to let you do the article and cryptically saying that if you can make it back alive with a story, you might have a job when you get home. You then reawaken on the island at the base of the cliff you've just fallen from, and don't get too far before you come across this lowly grump starving to death on the ground. Once you get him some food and help him up, he leads you back to where the town should be, but once you get there, it's obvious it's not much of a town anymore. All of the buildings are boarded up, and there's not a single grumpus to be found. Our new friend Philbo goes on to explain that something happened in town, and everyone has now split up all over the island. Most importantly, he reveals that Lisbeth is actually missing and has been for quite some time. It is at this point Philbo tasks you with finding the other grumpuses and convincing them to come back to town, which begins your journey of discovering not only what happened to Lisbeth, but also what the mystery of Snacktooth Island is. Pretty decent setup, right? As you explore the island and find new grumps, each one has you complete a quest for them that will ultimately convince them to move back to town. Once a grump moves back to town, they allow you to interview them, at which point you get new info about not only the interviewee, but also what they know about the disappearance of Lisbeth. They also present you with a clue of some kind. And it's through these clues that you slowly begin to get an idea of what exactly it was Lisbeth was working on before her disappearance. The interview aspect of the game is interesting, as it presents you with a bunch of questions to ask each grump, and I believe there may be some you do not have to ask, but other than that, there's not a lot of choice behind it. This was something I felt they could have perhaps expanded on. It really would have been fun to see how the story was impacted if you chose to play as a cold, straight-to-the-point journalist who was only there to find their story, versus playing as a journalist who was really there to get to know people and help them through their situation. But it's still a fun, cool way to go about things and does a great job keeping the mystery alive as you progress and hit milestones that trigger bigger events in the world. By the time you've found all the grumpuses and gotten them back to town, you essentially have everything you need to lead you in Lisbeth's direction and solve the mystery. So it's a relatively short story if you just run on through without doing anything else the game has to offer. I also can't say it's got the best writing out there, and the ending, although a nice little twist, left me wanting more from it. But for the majority of the game, what is there is thoughtful and manages to keep you engaged and wanting to know what's going to happen next. Now, I've talked a lot about Miss Lisbeth, but when you get right down to it, she's barely in this game. The vast majority of your time will actually be spent getting to know and love or hate the various other Grumpuses on the island. The Grumps of Snacktooth are, in my humble opinion, one of the best aspects of the game. There are 12 Grumps in total to find and get back to town, and each one boasts their own individual backstory, which of course also means that each one has their very own side story that you get the immense pleasure of completing throughout the game. All of the side quests that allow you to get to know these Grumps better are so great. Besides Grumda, they showcase exactly how everyone is dealing with being on the island, and not only being on the island, but how well they are getting along with each other without their community pillar Lisbert guiding them. In addition, all of them have come to the island for various reasons that tie into their stories. Don't be fooled by this game's childlike aura. These are characters going through some real and relatively deep things. For instance, one of the first Grumps you find almost immediately makes it known that he is having marital issues and is separated from his wife since coming to the island. One of my absolute favorite Grumps in the game, Snorpy, struggles immensely with anxiety and has convinced himself that a secret Grumpinati organization is out to get him, while his companion, the ever-so-sweet chat of the group, Chandlo, is nothing but worried for his partner and his mental state the entire game. And you end up realizing that his best way of coping with that is to make himself stronger and stronger so he feels like he always can protect Snorpy. There's even Shelda, an older Grump who came to the island on a spiritual journey, who ends up having her faith shaken. You get to talk with them and watch as they go through all these things, and you get to experience some truly great moments with these characters. And not even just individually, you also have the pleasure of watching them become a true community as they go through more and more together on this strange, unknown island. As I said, although presented in what can be described as a childlike animation style, these characters are indeed going through some real emotional and mental struggles, and going through that with them is a genuinely touching time. It was those interactions that truly kept me playing. Now, I mentioned earlier that one of the big tasks in the game is going around the island and finding all of these scattered Grumps. The island itself is pretty large, coming in at 8 nice-sized areas, each with their own biomes. You get your beach area, you get your springtime area, you got a nice summery area, there's a canyon and a desert where everything is on fire, and there's this cool-ass volcanic springs area, and then there's a more foresty area, and even a snowy mountain peak. You don't just have access to everywhere right from the beginning, though. You have to casually unlock new areas as you complete main quests. You go out, you find a couple Grumps, and then the main story has you go through a bigger event. And after that big event, usually another area opens up for you. This actually did great things for pacing and added to those great Grump interactions I was talking about. Although the volcanic area was actually accessed by a puzzle that I guessed the answer to, which made me think, oh, are they adding puzzles into the game? But then there was a total of 2 other puzzles on the main island, and both were a part of the main story. It made me a little sad that they didn't lean more into the puzzles, only because I could see some fun things that could have been done with it. Like, it could have made for some great run-ins with one-off variations of certain snacks, like they kinda did with this Black Strabby. Not to mention adding a touch more to the game in terms of content. Other than that though, the island is incredibly visually pleasing. The art style they chose really works well with everything that they've created, and the wide variety of biomes allowed them to have a bunch of fun with the snacks. Speaking of snacks, these little food mutants are absolutely adorable, and they really went all out when thinking up what bugs to make and how they would react to your character trying to catch them. When I first started this game, I was incredibly worried that the bug catching would start to feel like a chore, and I'm so utterly happy to have been proven wrong. There are so many varieties of snacks in each area on the island, and each of these snacks has a way to be caught. Okay, there are effectively 2 ways to catch a snack, via your trap or via your net. No matter what, they end up in one of those 2 places. It's how you get them there that's the fun part. You're given several tools to assist you in nudging these tasty morsels into your grasp, but don't assume that all of them can be caught using the same tactics. There are some snacks that are scared of certain tools that the player uses and know to stay away. There are some snacks that, if you're not careful, break apart into smaller snacks. There are some snacks that are on fire or frozen, and so you cannot get close to them or catch them until you defrost or put them out. There are even a few giant Bugsnax bosses, each with a fun boss fight that further makes you use your head to figure out exactly how you can get your hands on these beasts. And I could go on. They've really thought of so many ways to keep this great mechanic alive throughout the game, and they introduce the new tools at such a great pace that every time you get one, you get excited knowing that there's now a whole new set of snacks you're able to get your hands on. The only time I ever started to get that creeping feeling of boredom with this system was when the game was already almost finished, and by that point, the story takes over. I truly am so happy to say the bug catching was the other big highlight of the game for me. And of course, how cute the snacks are. I mean, look at this. Look at this pineapple tarantula. Look at this spicy jalapeno scorpion. And this Cheeto moth. And just look. Of course, they're much more sinister than their cuteness alludes to, but I don't need to spoil everything. The last thing I need to talk about before I can properly give this game a rating is the DLC, the Isle of Bugsnax. You trigger this DLC by making sure to talk to Snorpy after a certain point towards the end of the game. Make sure to go around and double check him because I missed him the first time and had to reload a save to go back and do it. Once triggered, you, Snorpy, and Chandlo have the pleasure of watching a giant island emerge from the depths of the sea just off the coast of Snacktooth. After getting a team together, with Snorpy choosing to stay behind because he's an adorable ball of anxiety, you head on over and are greeted with a sight to behold. Giant Bugsnax stomping and rolling about. All the varieties as well, save one very large happy bunger. The island itself is much smaller than Snacktooth, only being made up of one large area with a few sections being opened up to you as you do quests and explore. And it's just as visually pleasing as the main island in every way. What disappointed me was you get to the island and you see these giant snacks and immediately get excited, wondering how in the hell am I about to catch these things? However, that excitement quickly wears off once you realize that the only way to catch these snacks is to throw conveniently placed jars of shrinking dust stuff at them, which then allows you to catch them like normal. That's it. No new tools, no fun traps built into the island, nope. Just somehow not waterlogged jars of shrinking dust shit. As you may be able to tell, I was incredibly disappointed by this, especially because of how wonderfully thought out the bug catching is to begin with. The shrinking virtually did nothing to change gameplay, and even though these new snacks are fun to behold, it would have been much funner if they'd have thought up a whole new way to catch them. I may also feel a little extra salty with the shrinking mechanic because it straight up broke on me, causing me to have to quit and then reload my game, after which I could finally catch the thing that I needed. Now, that's not to say the entire DLC was ruined by this. There were a couple new ways to interact with these snacks, which was fun. They did also add in several variations of a fun new puzzle that utilizes your buggy ball, an utterly underused tool over on the main island, as well as doing a pretty good job at providing more great grump interactions whilst exploring this new island. Actually, yet again, the grumps are what stood out in this DLC, as you get a lot more interaction and story between characters that very rarely speak to each other over on Snacktooth. And it all wraps up with yet another wonderfully large buggy boss that was a particularly fun fight. In general, the DLC was meh. However much I did love the fact that we got more lore for these characters, and overall, I was able to find enjoyment in the process of getting to the boss of the island. I was just too disappointed by the fact that they did virtually nothing to spice up the mechanics. So when you see the rating, just take that and then lower it by a point for the DLC. As a whole, Bugsnax is a wonderfully charming and thoughtful game. The characters are fun to get to know, the setting is beautiful and unique, the bug catching is thought out and very well done. It definitely has some things that could have been improved upon and absolutely could have used a little more content, but I would say it's a pretty good game. And I for sure would play a sequel, if they make one, which the end credit dialogue definitely alludes to. With all that being said, I give Bugsnax 7 bites.